afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast. With me, your host, Imperial Dane. We are off here to have a look now at the Sturmpioneers. The basic builder unit here is the Oberkommanderist. Also happens to be the most elite of all the 4 units in that category. Although technically they can't really build base buildings, which is probably one of the sort of first things you'll notice about them. Secondly, they're also the most heavily equipped with assault rifles, which rather puts them quite far ahead. In particular, there's also a bit more elite in that regard compared to the others. So in that regard, they are much more expensive. They cost 320 manpower per squad, almost the same as a Panzer Grenadier unit. They of course also have the 5 levels of veterancy that units do. In that regard, they actually, I believe, gain some different abilities from. They also gain a lot of veterancy abilities as they vet up, first starting out with medical supplies, which allows them for 40 missions to lay down 3 crates which can be used from it, healing anyone. Also the enemies, to be careful about replacing their veterancy 3, they get their concussive grenade. They wouldn't really say it's actually worth it, to be honest, though that's merely my opinion. They also get access to minesweepers or a support package, but unlike other such packages, it actually allows them to repair faster as well. Plus, they can actually put the mines away, thus ensuring they can actually keep up the entire squad's firepower. So in that regard, they're already there, rather unique. Not only are they sort of the best unit, one and only, of course, they're expensive, but they also got a lot more ability compared to any other unit. They are, in that regard, pretty elite and pretty impressive. They also have access to Sturmpioneers, which are anti-infantry and anti-tank mines as well, and they also have access to the more unique reinforced steel barricade, which is basically barbed wire, which can't be cut by a wire cutter, but can also block off light vehicles like, say, half-track, scout cars, and the likes. So in that regard, they do possess a bunch of abilities. Plus, with commanders like the Luftwaffe ground forces, you can gain heavy fortifications that allows them to build tank traps, flag emplacements, and trenches. So in that regard, they do also gain a bit from other things, though they do lack in flamethrowers, so they do have a harder time clearing up buildings compared to other infantry. And the concussive grenade isn't necessarily the best either. So in that regard, they do have a slight weakness, but in open combat, they do possess some rather handy abilities. So again, note, the assault rifles, so longer range fire with rifle-equipped troops, they will not necessarily win out, though, of course, but short to medium range, they'll definitely have a bit more of an advantage. And in particular, generally, they can sort of catch in a one-on-one squad, sort of in about several situations, they can generally win. I mean, riflemen, conscripts, combat engineers. Rear troops, of course, might have a chance there with a volley fire to put a stop to them, but that's about really it at the moment. Otherwise, they can, in most cases, if you handle them well, win. Though, of course, in terms of sort of assault tactics, you, of course, have to keep things in mind. For example, attacking across on ground with them generally tends to end up not very well. You want to use, for example, cover to advance on them, or, for example, cover to pull out. For example, right here, this is what I'm doing. Constantly sticking to cover, making it much harder to hit, which is overall vital. Also, if you actually want to attack your opponent, say something very vital to keep in mind about your Sturmpioneers. They also have one thing they're also quite handy in, for example, in say if it comes to an M3A1, they can actually do reasonable amounts to it. Though, of course, you still want to use a bit of cover and be careful, but they can actually force away an M3A1 if you handle them correctly. So in that regard, their assault rifles also have that slight extra attribute in that direction. And that also really gives them, again, some early usage against the Soviets, and certainly having a few of them might not be all bad off. Though, again, they are expensive to replace, so, be careful with them. They are only 4-man, and they can rather easily be wiped out. They also cost 40 manpower to reinforce, so while they are powerful, while they pack a lot of punch, they are also expensive to maintain. Very expensive, in fact. So that is also something that needs to be kept sharply in mind. And another thing which is also a bit of a backside, they take ages to gain any kind of veterancy. I mean, first veterancy is 1 veterancy, that's alright, but veterancy 3, 4, and 5, you generally have to end up killing half a company's worth of men to sort of really get there. So that is also quite important to keep in mind with the Sturmpioneers. They do, in that regard, require a lot more before they sort of really hit a certain stride, if you will. But again, in many regards, they can be quite powerful if handled correctly, and they're certainly also one of the sort of more helpful units initially, though again expensive, so if you sort of try to rely on them, you won't have a lot of them, and again expensive to replace, so be careful with it. Consider retreat paths so you don't end up accidentally getting them killed on retreat. That can end up being a bit painful if you're not careful. And again, mine terrain when advancing, for example through here, nice bit of cover, move up throughout. Again, say we have the opponent here, using this to, for example, then get over here, then here, and then close to the enemy can, for example, work out nicely. Attacking across, for example, like here, would be a bad move. So in that regard, that's also an always good little piece of assault tactics. Help. Again, you know, try to take the path least fire as you get close. Don't take the most direct route, in particular not if it's open. Of course, if there's a lot of things to sort of obfuscate things, go for it, but otherwise, you know, the longer route. And with that in mind, you should hopefully have a clear idea of the strengths and weaknesses of the Sturmpioneers, which are rather quite interesting. Again, they are a very flexible unit. Of course, also note they, like the Volksgrenadiers, have the salvage operations ability, which allows them to actually, say, from an abandoned vehicle, wrecked vehicle, abandoned team weapon, or wrecked team weapon, can actually salvage fuel from them. Of course, they can also repair, and of course, a bunch of other things. So overall, a very, very versatile unit in some regards, at least when it comes to killing infantry and repairing and such. So if you can keep that in mind, you'll generally get a lot out of your Sturmpioneers. You'll be able to put down a lot of hurt to your opponent. If you realise situations where they excel, and of course as the opponent, you of course want to understand where they excel so you can try and avoid the situations where they are. For example, one thing you should be careful with is if you sort of end up engaging them at a certain range, and then be careful about pulling back, because all you do is present an even easier target to the Sturmpioneers. Either stop up and just engage and let them close in on you, because that's what a lot of players will do, or just fully retreat. Some players will sort of try to pull away, say within a certain range, and then sort of just expose the backs, allowing the Sturmpioneers easy shots, getting more kills, and then force to retreat. So in that regard, you know, consider the situation when engaging them, and you know, either stand your ground, get to cover, or just retreat. And don't underestimate, but at the same time, as a German player, don't overestimate them either. They can be very easily wiped out if you're not careful. So hopefully with that in mind, you'll have a great understanding of the Sturmpioneers, you'll get a lot more out of them, and of course, as an opponent facing them, you'll be a lot better equipped to dealing with them, minimizing their effects and the damage they can do upon your Soviet or American forces. This is Imperial Dane saying cheers. Hope you enjoyed this Propagandacast Lehr. If you have any sort of specific requests, feel free to pop them in. I'll see what I can do about that. Anyways, this is Imperial Dane saying cheers, and see you tomorrow.